Hey everyone, I'm Jack. You're listening to Scaling DevTools. Some of you may know that I'm working on my own dev tool, and this episode is really for early stage founders like me. And I kind of wanted to pull out some of the things that I've found most helpful from other DevTools founders that are much further along. So if you take away nothing else from Scaling DevTools, I hope that these lessons are helpful. By far the most important thing that is so easy to get wrong, I've got it wrong, I see so many of my friends get it wrong, is to really understand the problem that you're solving and to spend a lot of time talking to people that have that problem. The best person in the world to learn about this from is definitely Adam Frankl.
The biggest reason developer-facing startups fail is they're not listening to developers. That sounds kind of obvious, right? Okay. But what's actually hard about it is that if you're a developer and you found a startup to solve an important developer problem, your natural inclination is to write code.
Yes.
That's what developers do.
Yeah.
Okay. And you put stuff out there and you want your users to use it, and they use it, and you write more code and they use the code, right? Where in this formula are you talking to the developers and are the developers talking to you, right? It's not going to happen naturally unless you make it happen. And so after decades of working at it, right, I finally put together the pieces and figured out, okay, how can I create a system that is going to give me feedback in a way that's actually valuable to the people that I'm working with?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of different pieces that all came together to form what I call a technical advisory board. Now, here's the crazy thing about tabs. I could talk about tabs all day, okay? Is that number one, they're not technical. Number two, they don't give advice. And number three, they're not a board, okay? It's just the technical advisory board is what it's called, okay? So number one, because lots of people have tabs, right? They think, okay, I know some smart technical people that can give me advice, and my last boss thought I was amazing, and I want to get technical advice from them. And my dissertation advisor, I'm going to call them up, and they should give me technical advice. So this is what they think goes into an advisory board that is technical. But that's not what a technical advisory board is about, okay? You start with the problem first. I can look at the camera, I can look at you.
Yes.
Start with the problem first, okay? And then you want to talk about the problem with as many developers as possible. This sounds so obvious, but it's hard. You have to figure out what's the way you're going to do this, right? And you need to come up with some assumptions about who is going to have this problem. And then you need to reach out to people who might have the problem. If they have the problem, they might respond to you. And then you want to talk to them about the problem. And that's hard. Why is that hard? Because you're a developer, okay? You've thought about the problem, you've thought about a solution to it, and then you spent years thinking about your solution. You think about different approaches, you think about why you're selecting the one you're selecting, you think about the obstacles, you think about how you overcame the obstacles, you think about all the different aspects of your solution, you think about the different trade-offs you made, the different design decisions you made, right? What you learned across the way. Your mind is full of how it works. Okay, but that's not what developers want to talk about. It's what you want to talk about, but it's not what they want to talk about. What developers want to talk about is the problem. Okay, and that's what you need to talk about. You need to talk about the problem with them. And most developers, believe it or not, are eager to talk about the problem. They're not so eager to talk about how your product works. Okay, because they have problems. They have severe problems. All developers have problems. And guess what? They've tried to talk about it with people and no one else cares, okay? Their partner doesn't care. Their boss doesn't care. Their kids don't care, right? And you get them on Zoom and you're a startup founder, which immediately you have some level of credibility, right? And you care about their problems, they won't shut up, right? So It's a matter of the startup founder needing to understand the problem deeply and developers needing to talk about the problem deeply. Just get together and do this.
Yeah.
But it's so hard because it's not natural for anyone.
Yeah. So playing that back, it's like developers actually do want to talk to you about a problem. Yes. And that's what you need to spend a significant amount of time.
The developers aren't going to be reaching out to you, though.
Yes.
Right? That's not their job. Their job is to solve the problem, right? It's your job to find these developers and ask them about the problem, and then listen to them when they start talking about the problem.
So how do we assemble this team, these developers that we talk to? Do we talk to them on an ad hoc basis? What do you advise?
Thank you for that puffball question. Okay. The question is how do you assemble them, right? And the first rule I'm going to tell you is don't assemble them. Okay. Even though I call it a board, you actually want to have lots of conversations one-on-one. Okay. You never want to interview two people at the same time, because all that happens is the faster person will talk and the other person will just nod their head or nod off or will lose focus, right? So when you execute a technical advisory board, you're in the idea harvesting business, right? You want to listen and capture everyone's ideas, which means that you need to interview people one at a time, because if you interview them two at a time, you'll lose half the ideas. Not all the ideas are going to be great, but in order to find the great ideas, you have to listen to them all. Okay, so there's no assembly. All tab interviews are done one-on-one, okay? And then how do you find people? Well, to be honest, LinkedIn is great.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone you ever want to meet is there, and their resume is on LinkedIn, right? So you need to come up with some hypotheses. I mean, when I say you, I'm assuming you're a founder of a developer-facing startup, right? So you need to come up with some hypotheses about who's influencing the adoption of your technology, right? A wide range of job titles. And companies and types of companies and countries, and then go look for them.
This episode is brought to you by WorkOS. If you're building a dev tool, at some point your customers are going to start asking you for enterprise features. WorkOS offers you single sign-on, skim provisioning, and audit logs out the box. WorkOS is trusted by Perplexity and Vercel, as well as Workbrew, a homebrew management startup that I recently interviewed. I just told Mike that WorkOS is the sponsor, and this is what Mike said.
Yeah, so WorkOS isn't paying me any money for this. I pay WorkOS money for this, but WorkOS is like one of the best developer tools I've ever used. It's the documentation and the experience with building with them is so good. Like I initially was almost like, okay, this seems expensive, but then I built an integration with them in about 20 minutes that I had spent 2 days bang my head off the wall trying to build it directly with Okta. And then with WorkOS, I then have like many SSO providers like supported instead of just one. So yeah, like for me, WorkOS is one of the nicest developer experiences I've encountered in the last like 5 years, probably. And it's not surprising because a bunch of the developer team are ex-GitHub and therefore very good at their job.
Go to workos.com to learn more. The next lesson comes from the founder of Superbase, Ant Wilson. Ant shares that you have to experiment. Don't rely on what you read about in a book or just because there's this timeless dev tool rule that it always works. You have to experiment and see what works for you.
The advice I give to any, well, not just DevTools founders, but founders in general, is like you have to try every channel and you have to try every strategy to know what works. Before we started Superbase, we weren't Twitter users. We didn't understand the platform. We just tried it out and we were like, oh, like this actually works. And then it's like a case of, all right, what are the different styles of tweets? What are other people successful with? You know, like a little bit of memes, a little bit of like developer centric questions, a little bit of pushing the product, and finding that blend over time. And equally going to Reddit and, you know, testing out the strategy for different subreddits. It's all about, and we've tried all kinds. We've tried, you know, Instagram, TikTok, in-person meetups, and just learning the, you know, the efficiency basically of each channel. we just kind of discovered what worked and what didn't.
This also relates heavily to something that I don't have a clip for, but I think is really important, which is this fear. And I think that a lot of what blocks us is not that we don't know what to do. It's just because we're like afraid, or we're uncomfortable posting on Reddit, like Ant just mentioned, or creating memes and putting it out there. So I really think that if you actually put the time into these go-to-market things, whatever you do, and if you experiment, something's going to work. I spoke to my friend Sahand just yesterday, and he's running Notification API, which is a tool for sending B2B SaaS notifications. And they're doing really well. They've got a lot of customers, but he has this inclination to code. He loves coding still, even though he has a co-founder that also codes. And so if he's coding and his co-founder's coding, no one is actually doing this uncomfortable go-to-market stuff. And so we spoke yesterday about it, and he's like, yeah, crap, like I actually just need to spend all my time doing this stuff I don't really want to do, which is like actually promoting Notification API. Another lesson, which was just a complete aha moment for me, was when I spoke to Zeno from Resend. And he talks about the importance of that last mile, that packaging. So spending an insane amount of time on the README and how it's presented and all the descriptions and all this stuff that is so easy to just like leave till the last minute and throw it out there after you did the hard, like core logic of your dev tool.
So Clipboard.js, I think it has 30,000 stars on GitHub right now. Super big, right?
Huge.
And we got like the first 10,000 in the first like 1 week or two, something very, like it was very short. This was back in 2015. We launched in the same year as React or maybe it wasn't React. Like I can send you the links for this, but like there's Swift launched in the same year, and the top 10 launches of that year on GitHub were all for like Microsoft, Apple, Google, and then we're there. Like just like my name in this repo. And a lot of people were asking like, oh, how did you get so many stars in such a short amount of time and like all this attention? And what happened with that specific open source library was I spent 2 weeks building that before I launched. And only like 3 days were in the actual source code of the library. And the rest was all in the documentation page and on the website. So I really wanted like a very nice README and a very nice website. And when you go to the website, and you can go now if you want, you'll see that it's extremely simple. There's nothing, like it's no big deal. Like you go there, it's like super simple. But I wanted to make sure that like the flow was good, that the tagline was impactful, that the first intro was like, it explained the why. And I wanted to make sure we started with the why. And then the first demo is very like familiar. So we do like the GitHub input with the copy, which, you know, like you do that for copying the GitHub, the Git URL to clone the repo. So like very like things that are very simple, but I feel like most developers, they spend most of their time doing the source code and not thinking about how they're going to distribute and market and teach people how to do it. Whereas like you should maybe do like 50-50, you know, like, or maybe 80-20 even. That's how insanely important it is if you want to stand out nowadays. It's so hard to stand out. So if you just do the bare minimum, like, oh, I pushed to GitHub. Yeah, anyone can do that. But who can do like a README that really flows well, that makes sense, that it's exciting, you want to share with your friends, want to start using it at your company, at your open source, at your side project on a Saturday afternoon. I feel like many people miss that.
This is the last clip, and we have Gonto, who is the VP of marketing at Auth0. Gonto has this quote that it's better to be different than be better. And I think this applies so much. Adam Duvander also talks about having an opinion. And I think that if you put your neck out, especially if you've been talking to your users and you really understand this problem and you have a unique perspective, it can help so much.
I'm obsessed with this. Like, I think when I think about marketing, I think there's two things that matter at marketing. One is showing up on people's habits. So understanding developers' habits is key on how they relate to a problem, because then how to market to them is showing up in those places. However, if you show up literally the same as everybody else does, nobody will notice. So the idea of it's better to be different than better is this idea that if I do the same as the rest, but slightly better, nobody will notice. If I do something scrappy and but very unique and very different, I think people will notice and will make a huge, huge difference. And I think that's something that I think is important. I also hear a lot of companies talk about that for growth and for marketing, what's the most important thing is data. And I agree that data is important because it helps you iterate and become better. But data doesn't give you creative ideas. Data doesn't tell you exactly where to focus on. That's where I think having tastes, good gut feeling, and creativity, I think is a must for any marketing and growth team, where you actually can do some research. I believe more in qualitative research rather than qualitative at first, because you understand more specifics, more details you hear. And then once you have that, you can come up with more, I think, creative strategies. Like, I'll give you a few examples, but one creative strategy, for example, that Clerk, for example, that is a customer worked on, is this van. They built a van that I love. They bought it. They put basically Clerk all around the images and everything. And now every time there's a meetup in San Francisco or something, they just park the van in front. Sometimes they make cookies so people smell smell it basically and like it. Otherwise, they just have the van. But having something that goes every night to meetups where developers are, where they show up, is a thing that doesn't scale, but it's creative. It's like, wow, that one is really cool. Another one, for example, that GitLab did that I loved was GitHub did an event where they had very bad food on GitHub Universe. So what GitLab did was they rented the best taco truck in the bay or where they were doing the event. They put some stickers on top of it just to make it scrappy. And then they sent a message like, if you're at GitHub Universe and the food sucks, we got the best tacos in town for you to try it out. And there was like a queue of people there who then went back with their cup that says GitLab with a sticker and the napkins and stuff like that. And that's are the things that then people remember, that people notice, and that I think are unique.
I think one of the most important things Gonto says there is that it's not just being different. It's about really understanding the problem, understanding your users, having taste, and then being different and showing up in those places differently, consistently. So, in summary, spend an insane amount of time talking to your users and really understanding the problem. Become obsessed with the problem. And then when it comes to marketing, just try loads of different things and see what works for you and your use case. Don't trust the books. Don't even trust scaling DevTools. And then spend a ridiculous amount of time on the last mile, that packaging. Do what Zeno did and spend all the time on the README. Make it really great. And be different. Follow Gonto's advice and try and bring something new to the table and not just do what everyone else is doing. And the one that none of them say, but I can say for me, is every time I have done the thing I don't want to do, post on Reddit, create an article, it's really helped. And StreamPot, the dev tool that I'm working on, is very early stage, have some users, have a very small amount of paying customers. But the things that have worked have been when I've kind of swallowed that uncomfortable feeling and put it out there and really put a lot of time into the kind of packaging and actually trying to distribute it. So I hope this is helpful. We'll be back to regular scheduling next week with some really, really exciting guests coming up soon.